Greetings, curious acolytes of the galaxy, and welcome back to today's video. Darth Plagueis the Wise was one of the most powerful and intriguing Sith in recent history. Being the master of Lord Sidious, Plagueis is responsible for all of the evil that comes from Sidious, and the one that set in motion many things that would build the entire prequel era, including the creation of the Clone Army, and even the creation of Anakin Skywalker himself, and the coming of the Chosen One. He has a very impressive resume, with one of his crowning achievements being his ability to influence the midichlorians themselves. One thing about Plagueis we don't hear often though is his combat abilities or skill with the legendary lightsaber. Even the Darth Plagueis novel itself is pretty light on this subject, with him only really being in a handful of real fights, and only one actual lightsaber duel. Plagueis was incredibly powerful in the Force, and much preferred to rely on those skills to get him out of any conflict. However, every Jedi and Sith has at least one moment where they must brandish their lightsaber, and there really is no getting around it. So the question we wanted to answer today in this holocron opening is, what was the lightsaber form of Darth Plagueis? Well, sit back and confer with us as we attempt to answer this elusive question. There are only a couple of examples in the Darth Plagueis novel, as well as some common sense conclusions for us to draw from that indicate what form Plagueis might have used. In the novel, Plagueis is attacked by the Sith Lord Darth Venomous, a secret second apprentice trained by his own master in Darth Tenebris. The two have a very brief duel before Venomous is forced to yield by Plagueis' superior powers in the Force. Interestingly enough, the novel describes Plagueis as being one who actually despised lightsaber duels. He found them tedious and time-consuming, and he would much rather prefer to just use his powers in the Force to subdue his opponents. Despite this, however, Darth Tenebris liked a good fight, and thus sparred with Darth Plagueis often. Tenebris actually regarded Plagueis as a master of the lightsaber craft. Anyway, when Venomous and Plagueis fight, Plagueis is surprised to find that Venomous was very well trained in combat, and not only that, but Venomous had actually been trained in Plagueis' very style, so he was able to counter every attack done by Darth Plagueis specifically. The novel unfortunately doesn't tell us what style Plagueis and as a result Venomous uses, just that Venomous had mastered it, and it was giving Darth Plagueis a run for his money with the blade. The book doesn't tell us very well about how Plagueis fights, but if Venomous has mastered his style, then we can analyze what Venomous does and connect that back to Darth Plagueis. I have deduced that there are three possible forms that Darth Plagueis may have used, so let us begin our assessment. The first option is that Darth Plagueis may have used Form 7 Juyo. While at first I would have thought that someone as tall and elegant as Plagueis might have preferred the form of Makashi, this is quickly disproven by the fact that both he and Venomous were described as being very aggressive as well as acrobatic in their styles. They clashed so fast and so quickly that from a distance they were seen as lightning flashing together whenever their blades met. I don't think this would constitute as a Taru Form 4 though, as although it carried the same description of an Ataru master, Venomous and Plagueis were described as sinking very heavily into the dark side, and the emotions that flared from their confrontation makes me think that it has to do more with Form 7, as Form 7 is more of a mindset than an actual form. However, something else catches my attention during the duel, which brings me to my second option. Perhaps Plagueis preferred Form 6 Nyman. This particular form is more of a mashup of all the 5 previous forms of lightsaber combat in order to make a system that has no particular strengths, but at the same time no clear weaknesses. Form 6 was used primarily by those who didn't draw their lightsabers very often or found themselves in many situations where an adaptive lightsaber form is exactly what they needed. This was the form used by those that didn't particularly like lightsaber combat, which leads us to Plagueis. Nyman feels right for Plagueis, as not only did he not want to draw his saber very often, but he was more partial to using force-based attacks within the duels themselves. One of the staples of Nyman was the use of force attacks during combat. Make no mistake though, even people who have mastered the combat forms such as Jedi Master Sin Dralik and Exar Kun both used Nyman to devastating effect. Exar Kun had preferred a far more aggressive style of Nyman that made him a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. Both Venomous and Plagueis were described as being quite offensive in their maneuvers, so it might be deduced that Plagueis used Exar Kun's Nyman. But there is still one more option which I am starting to think could be the most likely of the three, and the form that Darth Plagueis used. What I find interesting is that the book also describes the fact that Venomous was switching forms rapidly and changing hands with his lightsaber, keeping Darth Plagueis at his toes. To me, this could be a clear indication of what Plagueis' style was. Here's what I mean. Lightsaber forms and fighting styles are two very different things. An individual can master one or more of the 7 forms of lightsaber combat. However, a Jedi or Sith develops their own style based on what they want to master. One can use an amalgamation of several forms which make up one style, or one might use reverse grip style of the lightsaber. So what the book tells us is that Venomous copied Darth Plagueis' style, but then goes on to say he was switching between forms rapidly. This tells us that Plagueis was a master of several lightsaber forms, or maybe even potentially all 7 forms of lightsaber combat. During the duel, he went from being more on the offensive, which we might indicate means Juyo, Ataru, or Gemso, and then he switched to completely defense, perhaps indicating a sudden switch to Sarisu Form 3. He then let the Force guide his body, describing it as he were outside of himself, controlling his own body through the Force like a marionette. Plagueis was fully on the defense, which caused Venomous to grow increasingly more frustrated as he couldn't land a single hit. This is a tell of most Sarisu masters, using an impenetrable wall of defense in order to bait out an opening for their opponent. This of course worked, and Venomous allowed his accuracy to slip. Plagueis found an opening and disarmed him before crossing both blades over the Bith's throat. This seamless switching of forms from both Plagueis and Venomous indicates to me that he was a master of all lightsaber forms and just had a distinct style of using them. I find this to be the most likely option because it would make sense as to why Sidious is also a master of all 7 forms, as he would have had learned that from Darth Plagueis. But tell us what you think of Plagueis and his lightsaber form in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on the options that we proposed to you? Being Form 7 Juya being his opener, then falling back upon Nyman, and finally Form 3 a master of defense. Which of the 3 options, or is it all of them, that you believe Darth Plagueis used in lightsaber combat? We always appreciate your input and support, and we hope to see you in the next video and next opening of a holocron. Until then, my friends, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.